Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining me tonight. I am very happy to be here with you. And we will just wait a few seconds until everyone connects. And when you are connected, please say hi and send me a small message in the comments so I can see who is here. Okay, so we have already a few people joining. It's quite nice to be again with you tonight. I was already doing a Facebook Live last week, and I had forgotten how nice it is to be with you. In a sense, just sharing online and not just by text message as we often do at Uplifters, but sharing also live in a sense, even though it's not real life. Okay, I'm not sure I'm very clear, but I can see some people joining. While we wait, I will tell you a bit more about Uplifters and this Facebook Live series. So I am Marie, I am Uplifters CEO and founder, and Uplifters is a non-profit organization empowering underprivileged communities with online education and peer support. So what it means, we offer a free online money management and personal growth program for domestic workers. So it's a free online course named Dare to Dream. And if you're interested, you can join. You just need to click send message on our Facebook page. So I will put a small banner so you have the information here on the Facebook page. Okay, and yeah, this Facebook Live. So our first objective with Uplift Your Night series is to be here with you. And we are first and foremost a community. And this is very important for us that we keep learning and supporting each other. So we always have a topic, and I will let you know a bit more about tonight's topic is goal setting and planning. But what is important is that beside everything you can learn tonight, it's also a discussion. So don't hesitate to ask all your questions. We are really here to answer you as much as we can. And if we don't know, it's even better, so we can dig in further and come back to you later on. Okay, so we're already more than 20, and we have some people commenting as well. So Janeline, hi Janeline, very nice to see you. So Janeline is one of our most committed team leaders in Singapore. It's very nice to see you here, Janeline. We have Eileen May also with us. Hi, Eileen. Thanks a lot for letting me sharing your story earlier this week. It was very inspiring for all the people I've met. And we have Hodi as well. Hi, Hodi. So Hodi is one of our newest team leaders from Hong Kong, but actually not that new, but with a lot of initiatives. She has also her own group of poetry. She's very active for the community, and I'm sure many of you already know her. And we have also a message from our head of program, Camille. Hi, Camille, who is also very interested in the topic, which is so crucial for our community. And Nacy, hi, Nacy. And Lloyd. Yeah, so tonight is about goal setting and planning. And yeah, most of us have big dreams and hope for the future, but often we just forget to plan and we forget to set goals. And as a result, just nothing happens. So to help us navigate this important topic, we will have Don Hatch as our guest tonight. And yeah, I think we can start in a few seconds now. I will introduce him very soon. Let me just show a few more comments. So we have Genevieve, hi as well. And Maria, good evening. Very nice to see you as well. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Yes, okay. So I think we can start now. So let me introduce Don, and I will add him to the Facebook Live in a second. So Don is the head of operations for Startup Incubator in Europe, which helps people interested in entrepreneurship to develop the idea and launch successful companies. So he has started 6 businesses of his own. He has more than 30 years of business and leadership experience. And he's also passionate about coaching and mentoring people to help them achieve their fullest potential. So we are, of course, super happy, grateful, and excited to be with Don tonight. And I will add him to the stream now. Hi, Don. Welcome. You're live now.
Thank you very much. Thanks to you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we are really privileged to have you tonight. Thanks again so much for joining us, and so for preparing a workshop on goal setting and planning, especially tailor-made for our community. So thank you. Thanks again. You can start your presentation when you are ready. I will just add it to the screen.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead and start the presentation. So I know this is an informal talk, but I wanted to also put a presentation together to have something visible for you guys to see and to kind of follow through to hopefully make it a little bit more meaningful. So goal setting to me, it's very, very important. We all need to have different goals to achieve what we want to achieve. That's what makes a goal different from just a wish. But the important part with goals is that you need to do planning. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about is planning. So to go ahead and get started, if there's a saying of, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will get you there. And so it's not enough just to have a goal. You need to figure out how to get from where you are to where you want to be. In other words, you need to create a plan for how to achieve that goal and how to evaluate them. And I am somebody who really loves planning. It's something I truly enjoy doing. I like to evaluate problems or evaluate situations and figure out how to achieve a solution or how to fix a problem. And I admit that I grin like a little kid when every step of my plan falls into place and everything happened exactly like I thought it was going to happen, but that doesn't always happen. Obviously, that's the goal, that's what we want, but that doesn't always happen. So when things don't go according to plan, what is important is that you took the time to evaluate the whole or the part of the problem. And so to put this into different terms or into a different context, there's a couple of quotes. One is from an American president in the past, Dwight Eisenhower, who said, "Plans are worthless, but planning is everything." And there's a 18th century German general who said that no plan ever survives the first shot of a battle. And so what both of them mean by that is that life happens. And when life changes, you need to be able to adapt to the new situation. And if you've already thought through your goal and you've evaluated how to achieve them, then you've already considered the variables or the things that could change. And so you've considered what you will do, how you will react to them, and what could happen. So you can adapt very quickly without it changing or disrupting or preventing you from achieving those goals. So it's kind of like having backup plans or backup strategies. And I don't want to talk to you today about goals in general terms, which is typically the way that you've probably heard most people talk to you about goals or goal setting. So my goal is at the end of this talk that you'll fully understand how to set goals, how to create plans to achieve those goals. So to do this, first I'm going to talk about what goals are and what goals are not. And then to give you some tips on how to plan out your goals and how to achieve them. So let's start out with what are goals. So goals are something that are tangible. They're something that you want to achieve. Goals are not wishes. Goals are not hopes. Goals are not dreams. So I wish that I had more hair. I hope that I live to be 100 years old. I dream to travel to another planet. And while these might be fun to talk about, they're not goals. Their outcome or them happening or not happening is completely out of my control. There's nothing that I can do to to make them happen. And so instead, I have a goal of becoming a C2 level fluent Spanish speaker by January 2022. So this goal is specific, it's measurable, it's realistic, and it has a time frame to it, or it's time bound. And so you might have heard of SMART goals in the past. And so this is exactly what a SMART goal is, being something that's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. And so a majority or a major problem regarding goals is far too many people say that they have goals, but they don't have a plan on how to achieve them. And they may set or make a goal and then just expect that it is going to happen, positive thinking or prayers, or that it's just magically going to happen all by itself. And so, for example, many people say that they have a goal of losing weight or to become healthier. And they might even start to do some exercise or start eating vegetables and start eating fewer cookies. However, without clear goals and a clear plan on how to achieve them, most likely you're going to slip back to the old routine in a few days, and the goal just simply becomes a wish or a dream, and it never happens. And so beyond specific, measurable, attainable, and time bound, another thing is to achieve your goals, they need to be clear. They need to be clear in your mind of what they are. They need to be visible. So it's not enough just to say that you have a goal. It's completely something else to write it down, to post it on your wall, to have it on your phone, to tell other people about it. That makes it visible. It makes it tangible. It makes it real. And also they need to be reviewed. Time changes everything. And so your goal that you had a year ago might need to change or might need to adapt because of things that have happened or the situation that you're in now. And so if you review them and you adjust them, you don't need to get rid of your goals because situations have changed, but you can adapt them and you can change them. So they need to be reviewed and they need to be adjusted for whatever the reality is. But most importantly, your goals need to be important to you. If you just set a goal for the sake of having a goal, you want to be an Olympic athlete, but you don't really mean it, then it's something that's never, ever going to happen. So it has to be really, truly important to you, something that you're willing to commit to, give time to, give energy to, and really make it happen, give life to it. So using the SMART goal framework, it's a good tool to help you evaluate your goal and to make them achievable. So let's kind of quickly, again, specific is if you were to tell somebody this is my goal and they repeated it back to you, would they tell you back the same thing? Were you specific enough that it's understandable? And is it measurable? I want to be a C2 level Spanish speaker. Yes, I can measure. I can take a test. I either achieved it or I didn't. Or I want to save a certain amount of money, or I want to lose a certain amount of weight. You either achieved the goal or you didn't. It's not just that I want to lose weight. That is not specific. Or measurable. So attainable, is it within your capacity? Again, I would like to have more hair. That is not within my capacity, or it's not something that's attainable. It's just not. I've given up on that already. Is it relevant? And so relevant is one of these terms that can be a little bit vague, but another way of saying that is it meaningful? Is it meaningful to you? Is it something that you're going to commit to? And time bound, just simply, does it have is it something you want to achieve in the next month, the next 6 months, in the next 3 years, or even in the next 10 years? And then you can work towards those. So first, I would like to address that when I was asked to give this presentation, something that I'm very aware of is that your life circumstances are very different from mine. I'm a middle-aged white American, college educated with a master's degree in business. I'm a business owner. And so some of you might be thinking that I don't really understand you and that my advice may not necessarily apply to you. We just come from very different situations. And so maybe my advice isn't really all that relevant to you. So let me start by sharing with you a little bit of my life's journey. And so that you can understand some of the challenges that I have had in my life and how they have shaped the person that I am today. So when I was 8 years old, my parents unfortunately went from being very successful to losing everything that they owned, and to the point that they never really recovered from it. It really affected my father's self-confidence. It got to the point where I remember going to a grocery store with my dad, and he asked the butcher for bones that he could give to his dog. And we didn't have a dog. What he was actually asking for is he wanted bones for the butcher that he could make soup stock so that he could feed his family. But he was too proud to actually ask the butcher for that because he didn't have the money to pay for groceries. At one point, my father was actually selling his blood to pay for groceries. So I know what it's like to be in a situation where struggling to put food on the table is a challenge. I'm also dyslexic, and so that made school very, very difficult for me. I did graduate from high school, but I barely graduated. It was definitely a struggle for me. I started working at 14 years old, a full-time job, and I was living on my own at 17. And for most of my adult life, I've worked 70, 80 hours a week. And then after starting several companies and being very successful for many years, when the recession hit in 2008, I was in a situation that unfortunately I was locked into and I couldn't get out of. So between 2008 and 2011, I watched 20 years of wealth that I had created be completely wiped out, and I had to claim bankruptcy in 2012. So I do not know your stories. I do not know the circumstances that you have come from, but I have had some what I consider very big challenges in my life that I have had to overcome. And so hopefully from that understanding, you can see that I can relate to some of the challenges that you have had and that you do have in your life. And my advice can be meaningful for you and helpful for you to overcome those challenges. So that's enough about the challenges I faced. So what about the successes? What makes my advice about goals relevant to you? So on the other side, I bought my first house when I was 19 years old. I started my first business when I was 27. That first business I ran for 18 years. And again, I've created 5 of the other businesses beyond that. At the age of 27, I went on my first vacation ever, and I went to a different country, and I saw how people lived in a different country, and that made exploring culture very significant and meaningful to me. And since then, I have made that a focus of my life, and I've traveled to 45 different countries, and then I've explored different cultures. At one point in my life, I ruptured my Achilles tendon and I could barely walk. And I made a goal of running a marathon. Since then, I've run 3 different marathons, and I ran 18 half marathons within 3 years after rupturing my Achilles tendon. I also was able to help my parents buy a business to help them get them back on their feet. And I helped them buy a house, and I helped them get in to a house. And along this journey, I also changed the direction of my life. So being dyslexic, barely graduating college, starting my own business, I never needed to go back to college. But I decided with changing my life that was something that was important to me. So at the age of 40, I decided to change the direction of what I was doing, and going to college and not only graduating with a bachelor's degree, but also getting an MBA from a top 10 school was how I was going to move to Europe and start living in Europe. And that was my goal, is to start seeing the world as a citizen rather than as just a tourist. So I created a 7-year plan of how I was going to not only get into a top 10 business school, but how I was going to pay for it and how that was going to work. So as being dyslexic and struggling, I graduated from my bachelor's degree with straight A's. I graduated top of my class, which that was part of my planning. That was part of my goal, because with those grades, I was able to get scholarships that helped me pay for school. And that became a very fundamental part of the planning. Without that, I wouldn't have been able to achieve that goal. And so that had several steps as well. I was accepted into my first pick of business schools. And I graduated with no debt, again, because of the commitment that I was able to give to not only working nights and weekends and doing pretty much nothing but work and school, but also I created a very extensive plan. And I firmly believe that these goals are also something that you can accomplish if you're willing to take the time to set the goals, break them down, plan them. You can achieve them as well. So again, if your goals are truly important to you, if you're committed to your goals, if you do the planning, if you keep your goals visible and include others in on your goals, help them, let them advise you to help you keep moving forward, you can achieve them. And I can't decide what is important for you, and I cannot make you commit to your goals. But what I can do is I can teach you how to plan your goals, and so that you can best achieve them. And once you set your goals, the best way to make them achievable is, in my opinion, reverse engineering. So just like with running a marathon, you don't set out to run 46 kilometers. You set out at the very beginning by running 2 kilometers or maybe 1 kilometer and work backwards or work forward. But first you have to know what the goal is. The goal is 46 kilometers. And then how do I get from where I am today to where I want to be? So let me go back to the example of losing weight to better explain that. Most people say that they want to be in better shape, but they don't really have a plan of how to get there. And they start making drastic changes to their routine. They drastically change their diet, or they eat much, much less than what they normally do. Or maybe they start exercising, but they never really thought about what type of exercise, how long, how much, how often. And they might see some small results and they might see some changes, but because there's no structure, because there's no order to it, and there's no milestones along the way, they usually give up. And so if the question becomes, what was the real goal? Was your goal to lose 5 kilos? Or was the goal a particular dress size? Or was the goal a certain amount of physical fitness? Each one of these different goals requires a different strategy and a different planning. If your goal is a certain level of physical fitness, you want to be able to, let's go to the example of running. You want to run a half marathon. Muscle weighs more than fat does. So you might actually weigh more than when you started the journey, but you got to the level of physical fitness, you got to the dress size that you wanted, but you didn't actually lose the weight. So the question is, what specifically is the goal? Breaking down what that is. And I want to be in better shape. It's a statement. It's not an actionable goal. And it has to be specific. How do you know that you've achieved your goal if the goal is just simply better shape? You need to start by defining specifically what you want to do, and then figure out how to get from where you are now to where you want to be. So there's a number of different goals that we can talk about. Losing weight or physical fitness, to me, that's a very short journey, and it's very simple as far as the planning goes. If we want to talk about getting into a new home or buying a new home, that there's fewer variables on, and so I don't feel it as good as an example as, let's say, you set the goal of sending your children to university. This, just like my plan, it's very complex. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of different steps involved to make it happen. It's not just a simple, this is what I want to do. So let's use sending your children to university as an example for what I mean by reverse engineering. And so first, let me ask you, if I want to send my children to university is a SMART goal by using that SMART framework. Is it specific? Which university? What type? When? So no, that it's not specific. Is it measurable? How many of your children? One children? All of your children? Is it to start university, or is it to graduate university? Is it achievable? And for that, are your kids in school now? Are they between the ages of let's say 12 and 24? Do you have sufficient time to achieve that goal? And that's going to depend. Is it results based? And so yes, it's result based. You want to send your children to university and you want them to graduate, so there is a result, graduating university. Is it time bound? As the statement is, no, it's not. So if we changed the goal to be, my goal is for my oldest daughter to graduate from a nursing program from an accredited university in 2029. So this goal is specific. It's clear on who, it's clear on what type of university, it is measurable, whether or not it's achieved. So as far as the question, is this achievable? Is it something that you could really actually make happen? That depends. If your oldest daughter is 13 to 17, currently in school, has good grades, then yes, it's likely attainable. If your oldest daughter is not in school, she's 8 years old, and you want the goal to graduate by 2029, it's likely not achievable. If your goal is to graduate from Harvard University, which has a tuition cost of more than $120,000 a year, and a nursing program is 5 years, so that's $700,000, this is probably not an achievable goal. If your goal is a local university with a tuition cost around 7,000 euros a year, then that means that the total cost of tuition is 35,000 euros. And if the goal is that you need that by 2029, all of it by 2029, then yes, likely this can be an achievable goal. But that again depends. Is your daughter willing to work hard enough to earn top grades? Is it your goal, or is it a goal that she is going to share with you and she is going to work just as hard? If it's only your goal, then it's not going to work. It has to be for this specific goal. She would have to share as much commitment and as much passion towards achieving it as you do. And then could you save realistically $200 a month or $250 a month? Is that something that you could do? Do you have bad debt? Are you able to pay off your bills? These things are all factors as to whether or not it truly is achievable. And again, one of the biggest variables is this just your goal, or is it also a goal that your daughter could share with you and be just as committed? So the cost of university is one of the bigger hurdles that you have to overcome. Going to university, graduating, yes, there's commitment, there's time, there's ability. But the thing that stops most people or most children from being able to go to university or graduate university is the financial part. So let's focus on just that part for right now. So that is the thing, is if we're looking at a university that, let's say, is $9,000 a year for 5 years, that's $45,000. And you think about, how do I achieve that? Typically, the advice is it's best to have 2 years saved. 2 years of the years, you would need to be able to save $500 a month, thousand during school. If you took out a $20,000 loan, and loans are very expensive, there's a lot of interest. And so when you look at the total cost, if this is the plan, add $35,000 of interest, this is an $80,000. This is probably not a plan that you want to do. And I probably would not recommend that you use this as your plan. So, okay, let's scrap that plan. Let's come up with a different plan. So in this plan, we found a university that's $7,000 a year for 5 years, $35,000 in total. So that's needing, or ideally saving, $14,000 to start. If your plan is to start in 4 years, then that would be on average $290 a month, saving an additional $11,000 during the school year. So during those 5 years, saving another $184 a month. And then if you could also add in a scholarship, either from the school directly or from a nonprofit organization, or once you start researching scholarships, there's a number of different directions that you can go with that. But if you could add in a $10,000 scholarship, then yeah, this could be an achievable plan if you could fit the rest of these. But that's not to say that this is the only plan. What if we look around and the university that we really think is best because it's closest, you wouldn't have to have housing, or it's a better university or whatever, it's $9,000. So it's more expensive. You would need to be able to save more money. Is that something that you could do? That is a question that you have to decide. Then could you save more during the school year? What if you weren't able to get $10,000 as a scholarship, but you could likely get $7,500? But then also, what if your daughter was willing to work part-time while she was in school, and she could contribute an additional $125 a month during the school program that she is? Then yes, this is an achievable goal. There's many different variables as to how we could make this achievable. And let's look at one more. What if it's even a little bit more expensive? It's $10,000, but you did a lot of research and you found that you could get up to $20,000 in scholarships if you met the academic criteria, meaning that she would have to work very, very hard on her grades, and you would, that is a plan in and of itself. But if you could earn that $20,000 in scholarships, if you found that that's available, then that would mean that you would only need to save about $200 a month to be able to get the necessary tuition to start. Then saving another roughly $200 a month during the 5 years. Plus, if your daughter worked and was able to save another $125, you could go to a more expensive school if this is the right one that you wanted to go to, for whatever reason that is. But you're able to do this, then this would be something that could be achievable. So this is where the planning comes in. This is not something you're going to sit down in one day or in a few hours and decide concretely, this is the university, these are the options to pay for it. That is something that you're going to have to spend time to really research. Is this something that not only you're committed to, but your daughter is committed to as well? If yes, then what are the options as far as universities? What are the costs? What are the options for scholarships, for grants, for internships, different ways to pay? And break that all down. And then for each one of those variables, that becomes its own plan. So to show you what that can look like. This is my whiteboard that I put together 4 years before I applied to go to my bachelor's program. And so the yellow papers that you can see down at the bottom, each one of those is a school that I was looking at. And you can see a whole lot of lines, and those lines are the criterias to get into that particular school. And there's, I divided the board into each one of the different sections to meet those criteria, or to meet each one of those requirements. And those became different action items that I would need to do, and a rough timeline for when I would need to do those. For example, to be a good candidate for the business schools, I would need that I would need to help to pay for tuition to get scholarships. There was 27 different action items that I would need to do for both the schools that I wanted to apply for and the scholarships. Both of those want to see requirements of having good grades, academic leadership skills, volunteer experience, and those are something that you can't do at the very last moment. So part of my plan was applying to an honor society, meaning that I had to have top grades. And then I became the president of the honor society. So as the president, I could decide what we were going to do. And I organized blood drives, and I organized community events so that I could show this more tangible actions that I was taking that would look good for the universities, and it would look good for the scholarships that I was going to try to apply to. And also by doing that, I created a lot of relationships with not only business leaders and companies, but also professors and the schools themselves, that I could use those relationships to get the letters of recommendations that I would need to not only apply for the schools, but also apply for those scholarships. And then several of those relationships, I explained to them why this was important to me, and I explained to them what my goal was and how I came to it, and they became passionate about helping. And I was able to recruit 9 of these people to act as something I called my personal advisory board, people that helped to advise me. And I sat down with them and I told them about my plan, and using their collective wisdom and their collective advice, I could better formulate my plan as to how to achieve these goals. And they could help me along the way to do that. And the collective wisdom of those 9 was far greater than what I was going to be able to do on my own. So I cannot recommend strongly enough to use this strategy to help you with your goals, whether it is your friends, whether it's people that you know. Seek out people that can help you, and create your own advisory board. And so be very cautious when you do that. If somebody has a vested interest, if it's something that you have to pay for, or there's a reason as to why they're trying to push you in a certain direction because they're part of that company, then maybe their advice is not as genuine as you would want it to be. So do be careful of who you get your advice from, but definitely seek out advice. So this whiteboard was on my wall. It was constantly visible. I looked at it every single day, and every week I would go through and I would evaluate the items on my board, what I needed to change, what I had to do in the next week, what I had to do in the next month, and so that I could constantly plan. And so especially with this large of a goal of sending your daughter to nursing school, this is the type of planning, this is how involved it could potentially look. But if you're willing to do it to this level and to this degree, then you're fully prepared and you know what to do and you can make it a very achievable goal. So the things that you would want to look at is for your board, savings. Figure out how much you need to save and how much you can save. What are the options to save? One of the bits of advice that I could give is try to keep either a separate account, out of sight, out of mind. It's if you had to go to the bank directly to deposit the money, it's not something you can do from your mobile phone. Then it makes it harder to get to, and it makes it less likely that you're going to tap into that on a whim. It would be available in an emergency if you had to, but it's not something you can very easily get to. And so if your goal, or if you're in your plan, you need to save $150 or $200 a month, my recommendation would be, when you can, add a little bit extra, so that when life happens and this month or that month you can't save as much because you had an emergency, then you have a little bit of a buffer built in. So add in a little bit of a buffer to your savings plan. Scholarships or grants, depending upon the country, depending upon the school, there's going to be a number of different options. There's options through the schools themselves. There's options through other organizations or through nonprofits. And there are a lot of resources, and you can spend hours and hours and hours doing research through hundreds of different options. Good grades are a requirement for almost every single one of them. So this is going to become something that is critical to the success of your plan. Other things, look at what the requirements are, what they're looking for those scholarships, so that you can add that in, whether it's volunteering, whether it's academic clubs, whether it's speaking a second or a third language. Internships are another good way to potentially help to get not only funding, but also help and advice. Loans, I put this on there. You want to avoid them if at all possible. The interest typically tends to be very high, and the cost of what you pay back, it tends to be very, very expensive. So I had to put it on there, but I would strongly suggest trying to avoid making it part of your plan. And again, advisors and mentors, reach out to teachers, reach out to current professors, or other people that you might know that have already been through university. What was their way? What was their plan? How did they structure their goals to be able to structure going through, and learn from them and have them act as advisors? Are there different nonprofits, like Uplifters is an amazing organization? Then if the goal is a nursing degree, talking to nurses that have recently graduated, or nurses associations, and can they help? Can they advise you on creating those steps? Breaking each one of those down becomes part of this plan. Now, again, losing weight or saving money for a house, it's a similar process, but it's a lot simpler. There's a lot fewer steps. And the reason why I wanted to use education and going to college is because this is very complex. And I don't want you to be afraid of thinking about something that is that big, because if you do break it down into these very small steps, then you can make these very large goals achievable. So again, if your goals are important to you, if it's worth investing the time and evaluating all these different steps, you can achieve them. But if you give up on planning after 5 minutes, then clearly it wasn't something that was important to you, and it's just a wish. And so after all your thorough analysis, if you determine that you don't have the time, you don't have the resources, you don't have the ability, then how can you adjust that goal? maybe instead of going to nursing school, maybe, which is a 5-year program, maybe a medical tech, which is a 3-year program, or maybe an assistant, which is a 2-year program. Or maybe your daughter's goal isn't nursing. Maybe that's your goal, but it's not her goal. She would be interested in going after a technology school, which technology jobs right now, they're very, very high paying. And within 18 months or 2 years, you can usually get a certificate to get you into a very high paying, good early job. So maybe that is a much better option than 5 years of a nursing program. So what is the goal that you're really wanting to achieve? Is it to create success for your children and get them into a good high paying job? There's different directions that you can go. So make sure especially in this scenario, if it's a goal for your children, for university, for school, for a job, talk with them. Make sure you share the goal, because if it's not important to them, then it doesn't matter how much planning you put into it. It's not going to be important. And that's my advice. So I know we've got a little bit of time left, so the rest is for questions. Anything that I can help to answer. I know that was a lot of material to go through, but hopefully breaking it down into those steps, it helped make it a little more understandable.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Don. It was very clear, and we had a lot of comments saying that they really enjoyed it, and especially I think all of it, but especially like how you need to create a smart goal, make it smart, and also the details of the financial plans were very helpful. We have one question actually from Camille asking what to do when an unexpected thing come across your way and change a plan.
So that is the whole part of planning is things are going to change. Absolutely. But if you've thought about how you're going to achieve the goal and you've broken it down into its different parts, then you've taken the time to think about how to get there, and you've taken the time to think about what is the best way for me to achieve the goal? Is it, or this particular single action item? So a scholarship, for example, if you are not able to get the scholarship, which is some of the money that you were going to rely on to pay for the education, if you can't get that, then what are you going to do? You need to think about that in advance so that if that does happen, then you already know what the strategy is to change and go this way or that way. One very simple example is I planned a hiking trip that it was 10 days, and I couldn't carry all of that food with me. And so I had to plan out the trip that I could set up different things along the way, and things were going to change with weather. But I had it that it was adaptable, that if something happened, I could adjust the strategy, I could change it, I could go this way versus that way. So that you actually need to think about that. That's part of the planning, is if you think about all these different action items, then you've already thought ahead of what will happen. And like one of the quotes that I gave at the beginning, the German general that said, no plan ever survives the first shot fired in a battle. Your plans are going to change. That's the critical part, is that you really thought about it. So when they do change, you can adapt.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. I think especially in these times with COVID-19, it has been a recurring question for all of us, because you make plans and you need to keep adapting. And I think then it comes down to motivation. When you have to keep changing your plans, it can really alter your motivation, and it may be harder to take action. Do you have some specific advice on how to take action, especially when, even if your goal is important, it's hard to be always 100% into it and motivated?
So first, yeah, if you have, the goals have to be important. If it's a small goal, if it's Oh, you want to save, you want to buy a particular Christmas present for one of your children. It's a small goal. It's very achievable. There's not a lot involved to it. Uh, if it doesn't happen, it's probably not all that important. For me, this goal of me really wanting to change my life, get an MBA, especially starting college at the age of 40. This was very, very important to me, and I gave up a lot of things. I knew that I was not going to have a lot of time for friends or family, and I knew that at the end I was going to be very, very tired, and I was. But the goal was very, very important to me, and breaking it down into all of those small little things, you can see the progress along the way. If your goal is that, let's use the example of you want to save money for a house. If just to pick a number out of the air, you want to save $20,000 to help you buy a piece of land. If the goal is $20,000, that's a very bad way to set a goal, because it's going to take you a very long way to get there. The goal should be broken down into how long based on your reality, based on how much you currently make, based on how much you can currently save, if there was no emergencies, if there's, in a perfect scenario, how much could you actually put aside? Are there different, things that you could do to help you achieve that goal? So it's not just saving money, but it's also doing A, B, C, or D. Working on a small project, or helping somebody complete something. You have to decide what that is. But what can I realistically save every month, every year, until I achieve that goal? So if you break it down into what is the goal for the year, what is the goal for the month, then you can see the success along the way of, I hit the goal for the month, I hit the goal for the year, I hit the goal. And you can adapt when that doesn't happen. Because if you weren't able to make it for 1 month, that's fine. Maybe 2 or 3 months, there was a health emergency, there was something, but then you can get on track later. So if it's broken down into small little pieces, small wins, you can call it sushi sizing the goal into smaller parts, then you can achieve it. But if it's just, I want to save 20,000, it's likely not to happen, because it's too big. You're going to look in your bank account and you're going to see 600 or 500 or 1,000, and it's so far between there and your goal that you're just going to go, this is never going to happen, and you'll get frustrated and you'll give up.
Thank you. It's very easy to remember. Sushi size your goals.
Sushi size your goals.
So you keep motivated, you can see your progress, and you can adapt more easily. It's great. Thank you for that. Also, keeping in mind that it's also about prioritization, right? If you have too many important goals, it's just impossible as well. So it seems important to remember it has to be realistic at some point.
Exactly. And one other thing on there is, there's also nothing wrong with creating flexibility in your goal. And so one example would be, I mentioned that I ran 3 marathons, and so once you start running, I'm very self-competitive. I set a goal of I wanted to complete the marathon in a certain amount of time. This was my goal of I wanted to reach this time. But I also had a secondary goal that was where I would feel okay. If I wasn't able to hit the goal that I was really, really aiming for, but I was within this other range, I still succeeded. I was still happy with that. That was within what I knew I could do, and I didn't feel I had let myself down. But it wasn't quite exactly the success that I wanted, but it was still something that I was happy with. So it's you can do that. You can, whether you want to call it cheating.
It's not cheating, you know. I think it's great. I mean, sometimes, you know, I feel also that it's you set yourself a goal, but you are not totally sure. Maybe it's not as high as what you can do, and maybe it's too high. So setting a range is quite smart.
And this is something I actually teach these entrepreneurs that we're teaching how to create businesses. Is when you're creating a business, obviously you're spending time and money and effort, and 9 out of 10 businesses fail. So the success rate is very, very low. And so there's a very good chance that you're going to spend all this time and money and effort, and at some point you have to stop because it's not the right thing to do to keep going forward. The right thing to do is to stop, come up with a new plan, a new goal, and go a completely different direction. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And what I encourage these teams to do is not to say, okay, if we don't hit this goal in 6 months, then we're going to stop. Because that black, white, very rigid goal, if the goal is we want to have 1,000 customers in 4 months, or we're going to shut down. If they have 997 customers, they're never going to stop. They're not going to say, well, we didn't hit 1,000, so thereby let's go this other direction. So what I recommend is your target is 1,000 in 4 months. But if you don't achieve that target, which is a clear, keep going forward, green light, full speed ahead, if you're within, let's say, 800 to 1,000, then you keep going forward for another 2 months. You keep going forward with a certain amount of time, with a certain amount of budget, and then evaluate again at that point. But if you're below this other range, then you know this is just not achievable. The best thing that we can do is to just stop, think if this is actually achievable, and if not, then let's set in this case, the goal is a successful business. Let's set a new goal, go a completely different direction where we can succeed, because it doesn't make sense to keep going forward. So setting ranges, I think, is also very, very critical. And so saving money to buy a house. If your goal is I want to save, and your target is just to use numbers, these might not apply. If your goal is you want to put $150 every month into a savings account, but after 6 months you've only ever been able to put $50 a month into that account, more than likely you're never going to hit that goal. That doesn't mean stop saving for a house, but adjust the goal with that rate of savings. What is achievable in what time frame? Is the time frame longer? Are you buying that house in now 8 years versus 4 years, or versus 3 years? So how do you change the goal, as well as how do you change what you're doing? Is it just that the goal is not that important? You could save 100 or 150, but well, you really like that new phone cover, and you really like that shirt, and those things become more important, and so you're spending money on things that aren't that important, and you're not saving. If that's what the situation is, then the goal isn't that important, and if the goal is not important, you'll never achieve it.
Well, thank you. I'm afraid we're going to miss our goal not to be take more than an hour. So we need to stop here. Before we finish, let me just show a few comments. So we had Teresita saying that it was very encouraging to watch. So thank you. I found the same. Esther saying very well said. So a lot of appreciation and just high message from many people. I'm not going to be able to screen everything. As you know, this is almost the end. Thank you so much. Before we end our broadcast, let's do our evening ritual together. So the evening ritual is something we do in our flagship course, Dare to Dream, 3-week money management course on money management, but also personal growth. This is very simple. It's just about sharing 3 little things that made you happy today. And so we are going to start with you, Don. What made you happy today?
So 3 things that made me happy today. One, I've got a text message from my niece who's in the US, which is more like my daughter than my niece. We have a very good close relationship, so that started my morning with a big smile. That is always good. It is a nice sunny day today, and I went for a nice run this morning with the sun shining and got to enjoy nature in a beautiful day. And then something that I'm always thankful for is I have a very amazing and special person in my life that always puts a smile on my face. So I'm thankful for her every day.
Great. For me, the 3 things that made me happy today. This morning, so my little boy just started pre-nursery, so he's just 2 years old. And it just started a week ago, and every day was screaming, didn't want to go. And this morning we was so happy and he didn't scream. So, so the day started much better. And I was very happy to go to my singing lesson. It's something I've just started a few months ago. And even when I'm tired after a long day, singing really helps you. I don't know, it gives me back energy actually, and it made me feel very good. So I mean, I've waited a long time before I started singing, but I really recommend it to everyone. And finally, I think as always, I'm very happy to do these Facebook Lives with you, and very grateful to have you done with us tonight. It was a super clear, super relevant presentation for our community. And I thank you for the hard work you put into it to make sure it's completely tailor-made and applicable for our community.
No worries. Thank you very much. The pleasure was all mine, and I'm glad I could help, and hopefully it's helpful for everyone that was watching.
It was. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the broadcast now, and I say good night to everyone. Bye-bye.